Hello and welcome. I'm in a parish on the outskirts of Lviv in western Ukraine in a small village. Now this is an area where we've seen hundreds of people coming in from various parts of Ukraine overnight. They're finally getting a chance to eat a meal, and most of the people over here are women and children, as you can see. That's because all of the men, other than those who are old and are infirm, have to fight for their country. They've not been allowed to actually come with their families, and that's adding to a great deal of the distress over here. Many of the women here, some of whom are pregnant, don't know if they'll ever see their spouses again. But right now the focus for all of these women, these children, is to find safety, and that safety might actually be on the borders, across the borders in Poland and in other countries. It is an incredible humanitarian crisis over here in Ukraine. More than 1.5 million, millions of refugees in fact at this juncture, and those numbers are only increasing. The big question for all of them over here: what happens to their homes, what happens to their lives, what happens to their loved ones, many of whom are going to remain over here. The fighting in several parts of Ukraine may not be very intense, but it does continue. And therefore the question is this: how long is this going to actually continue? Will there be a lasting ceasefire which takes place? We've also seen several students from other countries as well. Earlier today, I spoke to a Vietnamese student who hadn't spoken to her family in days. In fact, we offered her a telephone as well. She said that, okay, thank you very much. She would try and get in touch, however, on her own with her loved ones. But over here, there is both a sense of relief. There is also a sense of people being scared about their future. Relief because many of these individuals have heard the bombing. They've come from the worst affected parts of Ukraine right now. They've been in bunkers now for several days, and this is the first time that they're having a proper meal, and it's the first time that they've actually been able to get out of the bunker in days. Now the journey itself to come to places like this has been very difficult. In some cases it's taken days, in some cases it's not taken as much time. But the big focus now is what happens next. Will there be an exit ramp for the Russian President Vladimir Putin to avoid what is turning out, or what is already, a humanitarian catastrophe on the ground? And the big question is this: will India now have a role? Earlier today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for about 35 minutes. He thanked the Ukrainian President for assisting in getting Indian students out of this country. He is also speaking with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Will India now emerge as an important player in trying to bring about a lasting peace in this country? India has a diplomatic position which is fairly independent of both Russia and Ukraine. It's been criticized because many have felt that perhaps India should have had a more direct position against Russia. But in the United Nations General Assembly and in other UN forum, India has essentially been abstaining from votes. But that has given India a certain independence, a certain middle of the line position. And the big question is this: will India now be in a position to actually play a role in a lasting peace over here? Why? Because we've seen the French President Macron do that. We've seen the Turkish leader also do that. We've also seen the Israeli Prime Minister play a role, talking to both sides. But so far, Vladimir Putin has not been willing to move at all. He's not been willing to budge. But with the situation being what it is, with Russian forces taking huge hits, and with it becoming increasingly clear that this is a war that is not going to end overnight, unlike, for example, Afghanistan, it is clear that any siege of Ukrainian cities might be very protracted. There could be guerrilla battles out on the roads, out on the streets. And the big worry for Russia, therefore, would this be their next Afghanistan? Remember, the Soviet Union had gone into Afghanistan several decades back and ultimately had to withdraw as well. The last thing any leader would actually want is for a protracted battle. The Ukrainians want to fight. Their army is intact. Russia has not even been able to establish air superiority at this stage. But at this stage, at this juncture in the history of this country, the biggest need right now is the need for peace. Will that happen? Can India now play a role? Vishnu for NDTV.